understand the mystery. First take a look at the history. The words we use will give us clues. So join us now in Church Chatter.
Welcome to the Church Chatter podcast, where we unpack a different church word or phrase each week. I'm Dillon. I'm an ELCA Lutheran pastor.
I'm Sam. I study language and culture.
And so what is on our minds this week as we
Let's start by saying today is episode 58, and we're talking about the Enneagram, which we're going to explain what that is in a minute. What have you been paying attention to? You want me to go first?
Oh, you could. I have what I wanted to say, but yeah.
Go ahead. What have you been paying attention to this week?
It kind of goes with our Enneagram podcast, Enneagram episode, in that I've been thinking about people's personalities this week, and especially with the...
Weird, though. You're a pastor. You don't really ever have to deal with people's personalities. That's so weird.
Yeah. Try again. I've been thinking about personalities, and I've really been thinking about them because the government is now reopened, and yet people are still more divided than ever. I've been trying to weigh back and forth whether I'm with the more moderate Democrats, or if I'm with the more progressive Democrats. Should they have held off, and just kept the shutdown going for more weeks and more months and getting nothing done? Or should they have broken the ranks, created conversation? And I'm thinking about all of those people, over probably hundreds of people with so many different personalities, and what that looks like when they're in a room. I deal with a lot of personalities at church and see them all in a room, including myself, who has my own personality. And so that's what I've been thinking about, how people get along, how they don't get along, how bringing different personalities together can be both a good thing, but also a little tricky.
Yeah. There's a third option for you, which is you don't have to have an opinion on everything, and you could just accept reality as it is sometimes, because your opinion won't actually shift that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can say one thing that has come out of this for all of this with me is that I think you can still be a person of value in principle and yet not have to be a purist. I'm starting to realize that I don't think I'm very much a purist.
Yeah. You are in our kitchen, and don't talk too loud because it's echoey in there, just so you know.
Oh, great. Okay.
But still, you can talk, just don't go too much louder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Awesome. Are you going to ask me what I've been paying attention to?
What have you been paying attention to?
You're going to like this one. We haven't talked about this. I decided to save it till the podcast. The Alaskan wood frog.
Oh, God.
The Alaskan wood frog freezes in the winter. Like freezes, like no heartbeat, no muscle movement, is for all intents and purposes a stone. And then thaws out in the spring and goes on populating its species.
Does it have a lower heart rate, I'm guessing?
It has no heart rate.
No heart rate.
It has no heart rate when it is frozen. Like, no signs of life.
Fascinating.
Google it. That's crazy. It's not Easter season, but that's giving Easter.
Oh, totally.
Giving resurrection. I'm going to list a couple things. I've been paying attention to that. It's in my notebook, like 3 different pages the past 3 weeks. I keep bringing it up. It keeps coming back. Also, you know this very well because I wake you up in the morning. A lot of quantum physics. I have just pages in my notebook of quantum physics notes of just like learning what is the quantum gap and how there's no line of where it goes. Something it enters the quantum gap and then reappears, and it's about the space between the noise. I mean, it's just so good. So quantum physics is a thing I'm interested in right now, which is something a lot of people are interested in. That's not that
Yeah.
I'm pretty late to the game there. And last, I recently finished this book
Yeah.
called The Baby on the Fire Escape. It is so good because I'll tell you, I'm a mother. This book is about motherhood and creativity. And I feel like motherhood is, if you ever tell somebody being a mother is just not the best, they'll crucify you. You have to put a positive spin on it or you're terrible. You don't love your children, all these things, right? But this book talks about it's about writer mothers and artist mothers who were writers and artists and then they became mothers. And there are women who literally would swallow glass because they were so miserable, because they're parenting, they're mothering because of society. This is between the 1900s into like the early 2000s is the women lived during this book. Women swallowed glass because they were so desperate to create something and society wouldn't let them because they said, no, you're a mother now. You have to care to a child on your own or to multiple children. It's just like raw and honest. And it's also a lot about love for your children, but it's just this having kids sucks sometimes. And also it's beautiful, right? Because we have to say those things. Yeah, of course. But it's just a really raw book about motherhood if you're a creative person and what it can mean, how motherhood influences your creativity and how creativity influences your motherhood, and how different women who have kind of been successful in their art and their writing throughout history have either suffered or succeeded in that. Very good. Very interesting. On a house.
Great.
Yeah.
Did you light our candle? It is lit. Okay.
There we go. Okay. Okay, so you ready to jump into it?
Well, let's announce the topic.
Enneagram. I'm going to explain what the Enneagram is. So this podcast is the Church Chatter podcast. We talk about different words and phrases that might come up in church community. Up until now, we've done a lot of biblical language, church history language. The Enneagram is something that comes up within Christianity recently. So I'm going to give you a brief history of what the Enneagram is. We're going to go through it because Dillon, I'm pretty obsessed with it. I would say you're pretty interested. You use it from premarital counseling. Dillon and I use it in our own marriage all of the time to relate to each other. So the Enneagram is a personality quiz. If you think of INFJ kind of stuff, like you're an introvert or an extrovert, are you intuitive, or all those things. It's like that. But it's 9 different personality types. If you Google it, you'll see a circle with 9 different personality types. It gets very complicated. We're just doing a very brief thing today, mostly because some of our listeners out there who we know in real life, I want to know if they're Enneagram people because I just want to talk about it with people. So it's 9 personality types, but these 9 personality types are especially concerned with not how you behave, but why you behave that way, what your motivations are, what your fears are, and how that influences patterns of behavior for you. So just to break down the language, Ennea means 9 and gramma means something written or drawn. So Enneagram literally means a drawing of 9, and it has early Greek roots. So this is actually thousands of years old. It's a very ancient thing. Some people date it back to Pythagoras and early Greek philosophers. It was introduced in the West in the early 1900s, this Enneagram, the 9 personality types. It was introduced in the West in the early 1900s. In the 1970s, early psychology started to kind of take it as a tool. And in the 1970s, it became used as a tool by Christian teachers for discernment, especially Father Richard Rohr, if you know who he is. He's a teacher of the Enneagram. And a lot of people use it for a lot of things. Dillon uses it for premarital counseling. Anything else? Marital counseling in general?
Premarital counseling, marriage counseling.
Yeah.
So also just regular pastoral counseling. someone who's struggling with identity, or someone who's struggling with like goals and who they are, where I've used it for that.
It's a really good starting point for knowing why somebody's behaving the way they are. If you have a parent, if you have a sibling, if you have a friend, and you can kind of position or even have them like take the tests. There's tests online you can take to figure out. You'll probably after today kind of know which one you are once we go over them. But what's really important with this Enneagram stuff is it gets criticized sometimes because people oversimplify it, right? And like kind of treat it as a box. Like I'm a type 5. That doesn't mean I only behave ever as a type 5. Enneagram people who study this stuff, they do say that your type is your type. You don't change throughout your life. It's pretty, because it has a lot to do with your childhood wound, and you can't change that core wound that you were handed. We're all given a wound, and you can't change that. So you do operate from it, but you can loosen your grip on it, right? So do you think that explains it well enough to get started? So all we are doing in this episode, maybe in the future we can do more intense episodes, I don't know, but we're just going to go through all the 9 types and explain them. We're going to talk about the childhood wound, the motivation and fear and desires of all the types, the strengths and challenges, and how, if you are that type, what you should be doing to kind of grow. I hate that word grow, but essentially, right? Like the growth path. Are you ready?
Okay. It's okay to grow.
It is. I'm just not a fan of exponential growth and the idea that we should be like, be 1% better every day. It was like, okay, all right. Or you could just relax a little. Okay. So we're just going to go every other. I'm going to start with type 1. Are you ready?
Oh,
And
yeah.
if you're listening, like listen for people that you know in this. Listen for yourself in this, because it has been a tool of empathy for me. Some of the speaking of difficult personalities that you started with, some of the difficult personalities in my life, which we all have them, once I realized like, oh, this is why this thing happened to them, and this is why they're behaving this way, it really helps you see people and yourself as full-bodied humans, which can loosen the judgment. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay. Type 1. Type 1s are known as the reformer or the perfectionist. So the childhood wound is this person, a type 1, the reformer. They learned that it is not okay to make mistakes. You must be good, you must be responsible, and you must avoid error. So they somehow got that. That doesn't mean necessarily from their parents when we say a childhood wound, but maybe, right, for whatever reason. In their home, in their childhood, somewhere in those foundational years, they were taught, the type 1 was taught, you cannot make mistakes. That's not okay. You are unlovable when you make mistakes. So they grew up to be people who are motivated. They want to be good. They want to be right. And they want to be ethical. And they have this real fear that they're being bad, or they're corrupt in some way, or they are defective, right? These are the people who have a problem with every system. Nothing is ever good enough for them. It can be a little OCD, this type, a little like, that's why it's called a perfectionist sometimes, or like nothing is ever okay. It's the parent who never lets their child help with tasks around the house because their child never does it good enough. You know what I mean? Probably because their parent did the same thing to them, like it has to be good enough or it's a problem. There some strengths with a type 1 is they're responsible. They are very disciplined, they're principled, and they tend to have a lot of self-control. And the shadow side to that, the challenge is they can become overly critical of themselves and others. And their self-discipline can actually start to border into rigidity, like really unhealthy, rigid discipline, which can be a problem. And type 1s, their growth path would be learn to embrace imperfection and practice compassion towards yourself and others. Type 1s can often be very critical of others because they're critical of themselves, because they have a voice in their head telling them they're not good enough. So they think everyone else isn't good enough either. You feel like that summarizes it pretty good?
That's great.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Tell us about type 2.
So that was type 1. And then type 2 is known as the helper. I am a type 2, and therefore I'd be
textbook type.
Textbook, and therefore I would be known as a helper. And the childhood wound, once again, as Samantha said, not necessarily coming from parental wounds, could or could not, but something in childhood that perhaps has led one to be of this
It's,
type.
can I say something about childhood wound? Another way to think of it is it's a childhood wound, but it's the message that this person got over and over again in childhood somehow. And it's the space where they felt like if I'm my actual self, I'm unlovable. So that's what we mean by childhood wound. Okay, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. So the childhood wound for the type 2, which is the helper, is this idea that it is not okay to have your own needs. So it's this idea of kind of always looking at the needs of others, and a lot of times you'll neglect the needs of yourself, you meaning your own needs, and it focuses on the idea that you must be helpful and please others at all times, absolutely all times. You can never inconvenience someone, and that is can be good and also probably more so bad.
I think it's both, like all of
Yeah,
them. It's both.
the core motivation of a type 2 is to be loved and needed. And so if you have a type 2 who is really into service and doing things and helping things and giving a word of affirmation or something like that, that core motivation is because that person, including myself, is looking for love and to be needed. So when we are helping, we feel that that's where we get our love and need. The core fear of the 2 is being unwanted or unworthy of love. Not only divine love by God, but also love in community, love in family. And their core desire is to feel loved and appreciated. So when a helper does something, a type 2 does something, they would like to be appreciated and loved for what they do. I know all about that. The strengths are that a type 2 is a warm and generous and empathetic person, and they tend to be rather nurturing. This is very interesting because sometimes in our modern understandings of helpers, we think of helpers being a very feminine thing, or a role that a woman plays or takes on. And yet the fact of the matter is that both men and women are type 2s. And so therefore the whole sex and gender thing kind of goes out the window with this. This
Not
is not
entirely, not entirely. I'm going to push back
well,
that a little bit. Christians and women do over index as typing as a 2 because all of the messaging in Christian circles is help, 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 deny yourself and help others. And women are also given that message. So 2s tend to be more women, although there are men, obviously.
Sure, that's true. And yet, for a very long time before women could be pastors and lead churches and other things, you have seen a long line of. So I'd agree with you. I'm not disagreeing with you. But and in terms of the statistics, perhaps more recently, but men have always been a part of this, whether they knew it or not.
Yes, yes.
So the challenge with this. Can be positive or negative needs of others. So these are the challenging. So when a type 2 is having a struggle or a challenge, they can become kind of possessive or negative towards others' needs. And that could be, a challenge that they may have. And then the growth path, or kind of the moving forward for the 2, is to develop self-care and give without expectations. 2s are terrible at self-care, and because they're always giving care to others, and so they could use a retreat every once in a while. So,
or just a regular practice of being honest about their needs.
sure.
Like we think of self-care as these like events, like, oh, go to the spa. No, self-care can be as simple as be honest about what you need when you need it. Type 3s, or type 2s, this is really important. They're not just helpers because out of the kindness of their own heart, they're helping because they want to be noticed and appreciated. And when they don't get the level of appreciation like that they have decided in their own mind that they deserve, they become resentful and angry. Even if nobody asks for their help, they're just pouring themselves into other people. And when people don't give the equal amount back, they grow resentful. So resentment is a huge part of the type 2 experience if left unchecked. And the type 2 is, well, we'll just end it there. Yeah. Anything else to add as our type 2?
No, it's a beautiful blessing, and it's also a challenge. So
being married to a type 2 is lovely.
I'm sure it is.
Because you are very nurturing and kind. And then every couple months we have a cycle of you're not caring for yourself and you're starting to get angry at everybody because of it. It's a very type 2 thing. And then you have to reflect and tell people what you need and create some boundaries in your life. And then we're back on track again.
Perfect. So we can move on. So
when we get to 5, you can say all these things about me too. It's all right.
Oh.
Okay, type 3. Whenever I take the test online, I test very high as a type 3. I'm not a type 3 though, because these things don't speak to me, except I tend to be very achievement oriented, but type 3 is the achiever. And their wound is they were told as a child that you must succeed, you must achieve. This is the child who was probably told over and over again, you have to bring home straight A's or it's not good enough. An A- is not good enough. You must make captain of the basketball team. Just being on the basketball team isn't good enough. It's not okay to fail, right? They were given that message. So their motivation to feel loved is to be valuable and successful. In whatever way their given community measures success. In our capitalistic paradigm, it tends to be money and career. So type 3s tend to really want to impress people by having a lot of money, having a successful career, being the best at whatever they're doing. Their real fear is failure. They're so afraid that they're worthless. They're so afraid, like they want to be the best. They're terrified of failure. So their desire, and this is really important for a 3, it's not because they want to be good. It's not because they want to be the best. It's because they want to be admired for being the best. And there's a difference, because some people do operate from a place of like, I just want to be the best guitar player I can be, because they're fed by the passion. That's not a 3. A 3 they want to be the best because they want people to notice them being the best. So it's a lot about appearance. So their strengths are, these people are often the ones who are very goal oriented. They're very ambitious. They're very organized, because you have to be organized to have all these ducks in a row. But they can become either overly competitive or, and this is the big thing for 3s, image conscious. They have like a department of image management living on the inside of them, like just always aware of how other people are perceiving them. And you can tell who a 3 is often because they'll walk into a room and they will right away, they've developed this inner knowing of who are the most important people in this room. That's who I'm going to talk to because I want to impress them. I want to be seen with the most important people. I want to be liked by the most important people. These are status-oriented people, right? So they're ambitious, they're goal-oriented. These are good things, but they become very obsessed with their own image. And in order for a 3 to grow, they need to start valuing authenticity over appearance or performance, right? 3s are very easy to pick out. They're the people who are constantly, their eyes are scanning a room when they're talking to somebody else, looking for the next best person to come, right? Because they want the best people, the people with the highest status, to notice them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So next we have the type 4, and the type 4 is the individualist, or sometimes known as the romantic.
Can I pause you really quick?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. So you can have a wing type. So Dillon's a type 2. You could be a 2 with a wing 1 or a wing 3. Your wings are whatever's next to you. So if you're interested in the Enneagram, you can look that up. Dillon is a type 2 with a wing 1. So 2 is his type, but he has some 1 traits. I'm a type 5 and I have a wing 4. So I have a lot of this 4 stuff going on too. Not all of it because it's a wing, but it's there a little bit that feeds my 5-ness, if that makes sense. If not, keep listening. But okay.
Oh, that's good. That's good to offer up. So the type 4, the individualist or the romantic, their childhood background or their childhood wound is It's not okay to be ordinary or like others. And so the idea would be that they must be special or they must be unique, and perhaps they are, but they have this sense about them that being special and unique and not just something ordinary is what they need to hold on to, and it's what people will see them for. Their core motivation is, once again, to be unique, to either have this special talent or this special gift or this special offering, so that people will be able to see them.
They're the nonconformists. They're like, I like this band that no one else has ever heard of.
Yeah. Yeah, they like to tout. Well, no one's ever heard this before. Let me tell you this. I'm sure you've never heard it before.
I have that.
Type of an individual. Their core desire is to be significant, to be significant, and to kind of be the person in the room that has that, once again, that special token or that special thing to offer. They have great strengths. They're very creative. They're emotionally deep, and they express that. They can express that in many different ways. And the challenge, though, is that sometimes they have they're emotionally maybe perhaps like a little bit of a roller coaster, in that they have mood swings, and they're can be a little self-absorbed sometimes. That's the challenge that they have, and their growth path, or their growth that they look to, is to be appreciated, and to appreciate the ordinary. So the mundane things of life, such as washing dishes and doing laundry and doing whatever that might be, is something that they could help them kind of balance out the uniqueness and specialness with also the ordinary, because they tend to be more obsessed with the extraordinary. And so fours are a wonderful number.
My friend in the whole world, Aaron, is a 4. I love.
Right.
They're deeply creative. There's a real emotional depth to them. Yeah,
you're up.
All right, type 5. I am a type 5. By the book, everything about a 5. I'm a 5.
Textbook 5.
So feel free to say anything you'd like here. But okay, so the type 5 is often called the observer or the investigator. If you listen to our testimony episode, you've already got some of this from me. You already know this. But a type 5, the wound that they were handed in childhood, they learned it is not okay to depend on others because they will let you down. It is not okay to express your needs. So Dillon and I both have this thing in our types with expressing needs. So type 5 learned you can't express your needs. You must isolate yourself and do not express any emotion. That is not safe for you to do. So instead, type 5 is learned you have to rely on your mind and you have to be self-sufficient. That's a 5 in a nutshell, would you say?
Absolutely.
So it has led to a type 5 being called the investigator or the observer, because type 5s, our core motivation is to understand the world, anything. We are obsessed with knowledge, obsessed. So our core motivation is to understand. Our core fear is to be incompetent or to not know something. Our core emotional fear, which is why we rely heavily on the mind, we are so afraid of being emotionally overwhelmed because somewhere along the way we picked up the message that there are too many emotions and I don't know what to do with them because I was never taught where to put them. So whenever there are too many emotions, I'm overwhelmed. So 5s will isolate to protect themselves from feeling overwhelmed. And in that isolation, they retreat to their mind. That is a 5. So they are so afraid of being incompetent and emotionally overwhelmed. And the core desire is to be capable, self-sufficient, and knowledgeable about whatever it is that they're learning. So as a 5, I've said this on this podcast already, it is not uncommon for me if I am out in the wild and somebody casually mentions a book that they read and I have not read that book, I will go home and I will read that book within 48 hours. I will have notes in the book. I will set up a time to go socialize with that person and I will casually mention the book so they can bring it up. And now I will try to impress them with how much I know about this book that they love. And half the time they don't care at all. But I now feel competent. Like, okay, my job is done here. They know that I know something about, like, I know more than them about this thing, right? Which is crazy. That's insanity. I'm keeping it in check, guys, but that's crazy. I spent most of my life doing that. It could be about a band. It could be about a research topic. It could anything that somebody is interested in. I'm like, oh yeah, give me a day. And I will just go and devour everything. The content that I consume is a problem. And also I can't stop and I won't stop. The core desires to be capable and knowledgeable. Strengths of a type 5 is we can be very analytical, objective, and independent, which is actually a really helpful person to have on a lot of teams, because when everybody else, listen, I also have a wing 4, so I'm an emotional person. I've also grown up and I've done some work around this stuff. I now drop my awareness into my emotions, right? I've done that work. I'm here. But type 5s who are left unchecked, which can be a skill, and I can enter into this very quickly. It's almost like we can take our emotions, put them outside of us, observe a situation, and provide a very analytical, objective observation. And that can be a real asset sometimes. It can also become sociopathic if you're a deeply unwell person. So you need to have the emotions back in there. The challenges are we can become withdrawn and we can become very detached, and we can become overly private. The privacy stuff is probably the one thing I don't have as a 5. I'm not a private person, but I can become very detached. I can become very isolated. I can kind of retreat into my own hobbies and whatever it is that I'm reading or learning about. I can really retreat there if I'm not careful. And for a 5, if you feel like you're a 5, something that we have to do is we have to acknowledge, how do I say this? We have to engage with the world emotionally. And we have to somehow, and honestly, the podcast is this for me in some ways, we have to find ways to share our inner life. And I think it's such a gift that I'm a writer, because as a 5, it gives me that space to, okay, I'm learning all this stuff. Let me share it now. So if you're a 5 and you just like are consuming all this stuff, but you have no outlet to express it, that can be a real problem. Anything to add to my 5-ness?
No, I think you did very well speaking about yourself.
Is it hard for you to be married to a 5?
No, I like being married to a 5. I think it's always something different in that you are sharing something or looking something up, and I don't mind it at all. I mean, I could share much more, but yeah, I think you just froze
You're freezing
a little bit. All right. So, are you there?
Say something.
Are you there?
Mm-hmm.
Little frozen there. Okay. So that was the 5, and I'm happy to be
Is it
married to you as a
overwhelming?
5. No, oh no, not at all. You might have asked me that, and there was a delay, but so we're moving on to the type 6, and the type 6 is the loyalist. And the interesting thing about the type 6 is many people in the world are type 6s. I mean, there's a multitude of all 9 of them, but a lot of people find themselves to be a 6.
Richard Rohr estimates that most of the global population right now is a 6. We're living in a very 6 world.
Yeah. So the 6 is a loyalist, as I said, and their childhood wound or background is that it's not okay to trust yourself. You can't trust yourself. And there's kind of a little bit of an issue with not having a stable guidance in your life. So you must seek authority or rules or principles in order to feel safe and secure. So the idea is you don't trust yourself. You don't trust who you are. And so therefore you have to look at outside of yourself in the exterior to a list of rules or regulations or a leader or something like that to help you get on track. So you're kind of loyal to a set of beliefs, or you're loyal to a figure, and that's kind of the 6 as a loyalist.
Can I say something really quick?
Sure.
A giveaway for a lot of sixes is the person who's like the die-hard Democrat. Like it's their identity. They have pledged allegiance to this party, and there is nothing this party could do to knock it off that pedestal. Or they're a die-hard Republican or independent, or the like super hyper religious person who just cannot look outside of the black and whiteness of their religion because there's something for them. They need it for safety because they weren't given a stable authority figure in childhood somewhere that they were craving it, whatever that looked like for them. That could have even been in school. It could have been in the home, wherever it was. And so they just latch on to the first stable thing, and they just that thing couldn't possibly fall apart for them. It's often in religion and politics, and it's just this black and white thing.
Yeah.
Good.
And they tend to teeter on the on the wall of being a purist. A loyalist can a lot of times also be a purist with whatever side they find themselves on. Their core motivation is to find safety, security, and absolute support, and which leads them to a core fear of being without guidance or security. So if there is no guardrails, if there is no guidance, there is no security, they find themselves, that is a place and state of fear for them. But their core desire is to have a stability, and that is not a bad thing. Stability is needed, and it's even should be welcomed by people of all types. Stability is a good thing, and so that core desire to be stable is one of great. How do I want to say it? It's a great quality to have, I should say. And their strengths are that they are loyal and they're reliable people. If they say that, I'm using an example that Samantha always says, if they say that they're going to pick you up at 5 o'clock in the morning at the airport, you can depend on them as being loyal, that they will be there and the car will be there. They'll have a coffee for you, and they're going to be there 20 minutes early. And they're going to have the four-way flashers on, and you're going to just come right out with your luggage, and all's going to be well. So, and that's a good thing. Their challenge can be they tend to be very anxious, hypervigilant, and sometimes a little suspicious of others who may not be like them. And so that's the challenge that they have. And the growth path, that is something in which they can expand their understandings about life, is to acknowledge the inherent worthiness in other people instead of the external reassurance. So seeing people that are different from them as also being a part of the greater understanding of what the world is and its diversity. The six understands diversity, but the six sometimes struggles with inclusion.
It's also an inward thing too. Sixes need to understand that you are good enough, even if the group that you have pledged allegiance to says that you need to jump through these hoops or behave or believe a certain way. You're good enough without that.
Right.
Yeah. Just this inherent worthiness of themselves and of others.
That's the six.
That's the six. Yeah. Okay. The seven. So we have 7, 8, 9 left. I was raised by a 7 and an 8, so I know these well. A 7 is the enthusiast. The childhood wound of the 7 tends to be, I can't feel pain. I must deny my pain by either staying busy or staying positive. I struggle with 7s. And actually, a lot of people, if you were to ask them what they would be, like if I could be anything, it's a 7, because 7s are fun. They're happy, right? They're happy. Nothing's ever a problem. Just keep going. I can do this. But 7s are actually denying themselves part of the human experience with their toxic positivity. 7s sometimes are the people, a lot of people do this, but the people who can't sit still, they can't possibly sit down and watch a movie because they might feel something bad. You can't have that because in their childhood, they learned you can't feel pain. You have to be happy, happy, happy. Keep going. Their drug of choice is denial, right? So their core motivation is to be happy and avoid pain. Many addicts tend to be 7s. So their core fear is being trapped in emotion. Just like 5s, they don't want to be trapped in emotion, so we retreat to our mind. Sevens retreat. They just take that emotion and twist it. And they're like, oh, I feel sad. No, push that down. I'm happy. Everything's fine. Let's talk about the silver lining. Could be worse, right? People who are like, oh, it could be worse. It's not that bad, right? It's unhealthy, right? So these are the sevens. Their core desire is to experience joy. Their strengths are, these are easy people to be around. I actually feel bad for sevens because I feel like sevens and twos, Dillon's type, if you have a 7 or a 2 in your life, you don't want them to change. I want people who are helpful around me. I want people who are happy around me, right? It makes me feel good. When a 2 or a 7, when a 2 who is a helper decides, you know what, I'm going to ask other people for help. We don't like that. When a 7 who's usually happy decides, I'm going to actually experience my sadness. We don't like that. People don't want them to be healthier versions of themselves because that's not as useful to us, right? So I feel bad for the sevens, but they're very optimistic and energetic. They're fun to be around. The shadow side to that is they tend to be very scattered people. They tend to like, they're so happy, right? And they want to do so much that they take on too much sometimes, and they end up being very scattered, even in the way they speak. Can be difficult to come along with. The way if you're in like a committee or a group with the 7, it can be very hard to plan with them because you're not quite like, they're just kind of all over the place. They can be late a lot. Again, there's a lot of ways 7s can show up, but they're scattered, impulsive, very avoidant of any kind of discomfort, any kind of pain. Again, for a 7, denial is their drug of choice. These are the people who say, you just do what you got to do, right? Like really suck it up. Oh, I had it worse. You just keep going. That's a 7. And their growth path is to, first of all, be present. Instead of thinking about all the things you want to do, like just be here. Instead of when people visit and you're like doing the dishes and you can't possibly sit down and visit because you might actually have a real human emotion, be present, focus, right? If you are a person, so once you learn more about the Enneagram, if you're interested, you'll also see like a 5. I'm a 5. When I am unhealthy, when I'm in an unhealthy expression of 5ness, I move towards 7 behavior, which is being scattered, impulsive, avoidant of pain. Dillon knows this, I have like 6 different started crocheted blankets around the house. When I start a project and I don't finish it, that's my first sign that I'm in unhealth. There's something going on that I'm in unhealth because I'm acting like a 7 with like all these different projects, and I'm like so happy about everything, right? Because I tend to be in a place of unhealth when that happens. So focus, and then last is being content. A 7 needs to work on being content, even if the present moment is sad or hard or full of grief. You need to let that come through instead of just saying, oh, it is what it is, right? That's unhealthy behavior for a 7, for anybody. But again, they're really fun. They're easy to be around because they don't like to complain.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, 7s are that way, and
Yeah.
and they are quite fun. Which leads us to the type 8, which is the challenger.
Which is another
And
parent of mine.
the challenger, their background, their childhood background, their childhood wound, if you want to call it that, is that they are not okay with being a vulnerable person or trusting others. The vulnerability is a non-starter for them. If they find themselves in a situation where they have to be vulnerable or trust others, the type 8, the challenger, wants to run for the hills. They don't even want, I should say it this way. They don't even want to be hurt again. There's this kind of wound of being hurt, and so they kind of put up this armor on themselves to be strong and aggressive and powerful, and place themselves in an order so that they might survive, right? And so that go ahead.
And 8, oftentimes when you talk to 8s, you learn very quickly there was either a pattern of bullying in their childhood where they were made, or there was an instance of abuse, either a pattern of abuse or just a specific event of abuse.
Right.
Because their wound became, I was weak then, I will never be weak again. I will be
Right.
the strong one. I will be in control. I will never let myself be taken advantage of like that again.
Yeah.
So it's
So
actually like this wounded puppy inside that just shows up like this barking, biting thing.
So the type 8, the challenger, their understanding of living in the world is that they want to be tough as nails. You know, they want to be tough. They're gonna put on that armor. They're gonna charge in and challenge the oppressor or the person who's against them. They're not going to let vulnerability or trusting others come and weaken them. They're gonna be tough as nails. Their core motivation for this is to protect themselves from the vulnerability of others. When others are vulnerable, they don't like that because that might mean that they have to also be vulnerable. They don't really like that. They want to protect themselves and make sure that they're safe. And everybody wants to be safe. There's nothing wrong with that.
And
But
eight wants to protect other vulnerable people as well.
what's that?
And 8 likes to protect themselves, but they also come
Yeah.
along other vulnerable people. Like 8s tend to love babies and animals because they're so vulnerable. But once those babies grow up, they have a hard time with them.
Well, yes, that's what I'm saying. That they don't like the vulnerability and mushy gushy of others, especially yes when they age. That's very true. So their core fear is being weak, right? They want to be tough as nails. They don't want to be weak, and they don't want to be controlled. They do not want to be under the boot, as some people would say. Their core desire is to be strong and in control of their own life. And you can see that very, very prominently in the 8. They do have great strengths in that they are very confident people, usually, and they can be very assertive. They can be very assertive, very confident, and that helps them live and be in the world. Their challenges it can become they can be a domineering person, and they can be confrontational, and they can have an intensity to them that almost may propel people from wanting to be in community with them. That doesn't mean they're a bad person or they do things wrong or something like that, but their visceralness towards kind of this domineering understanding and very conflict. If you like arguing, then you might want to be friends with an 8.
Or you might be an 8.
Or you might be an 8, or you like, although argument and debate are two totally different things. I do want to make that very clear. You can have a healthy debate and it doesn't have to be an argument. But the type 8, the challenger, enjoys a little bit of argument.
Well, the difference for an 8 is, because I have a lot of 8s in my life, so I know this. 8s think that yelling at each other is like loving loudly.
Yeah.
They don't see it for the aggression that everyone else sees it as. They think it's connection. I'm like, oh, look, we're debating. This is healthy. When everyone else is like, calm down. You are being aggressive and I'm afraid of you right now. They don't see that as a fear thing, which is.
Yeah, they see it as a relational connection between another person, even though they might be disagreeing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the idea of their growth path would be that it is important for the 8 to embrace vulnerability, to it's okay sometimes to not be the strong person in the room. It's okay to have a moment of calm, a moment of weakness, and
It's okay to
vulnerability.
not be the loudest either and to let other people speak.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the 8.
Yeah, that's good. I have a lot to say about the 8. I'm trying to think if I want to say all of it because it could be a lot.
Well, I just want to warn you that I am at 5%.
All right, we'll keep going. All right, type 9.
Not to cut you off, but
type 9, the last one is called the peacemaker. Their wound, they learned somewhere in childhood that it is not okay to assert myself or to have a voice. I have to suppress my own desires in order to minimize conflict. So sometimes a type 9 might have had a high conflict parent and they were like the peacekeeper who kind of had to enter into that. Their core motivation is to have peace and harmony. It's the person in the room who tends to not have an opinion on anything, politically, religiously, in their own life. They tend to just be like, oh yeah, I can see everybody's point of view. Their core fear is any kind of conflict because they probably grew up with conflict somewhere in the home, in a community of faith, in their school, in a friend group, somewhere in their childhood, there was major conflict and they realized that is bad. That's where disconnection happens. I need to never be a part of it, which is bad because sometimes you need conflict. That's actually on the other side of conflict is where the depth of love comes in. But their core desire is to have a constant peace of mind. They never want any fighting. They never want any conflict. So they're neutral on everything. They can become kind of like a two. They can almost become very codependent to the point where they have no identity of their own because they're just removing their personality and thoughts and stances from the equation. These are fun people to be around too because they're pretty easygoing. They're pretty diplomatic. They don't have many hills to die on. They're not going to fight. People like that, right? But it actually is coming from a place of unhealth because their own identity is not existing. So they're easygoing, they're diplomatic. Some of their challenges, though, is they can be complacent. Nines could see something bad happening right in front of them and they'll turn their face. They won't look at it because they don't want to enter into it. They're not saving anybody. They're not sticking up for anybody. They're not speaking out, right? They can become very passive, which can be a problem. And they think that it's the people who tend to be like, you've heard Dillon and I talk about this, but moderate. They're like, I'm a moderate. I'm in the middle on everything. And a lot of nines have that, right? You want to push back?
I do.
Go ahead.
I do not, because I was just going to say this. I do not see the nine as a moderate. So a moderate or a centrist, those two things can be used or interchanged. What I see the nine is sometimes there's a difference between being moderate or centrist and being neutral. I see the peacemaker, the nine, being a person of neutrality. A moderate has a clear position, but they're not a purist about that position. Where the nine is, they don't really have a position on anything. They are really a type of Switzerland in understanding.
They're just washing their hands of it.
They wash their hands of it. They actually, at least the centrist or the moderate, finds themselves in a committed group. They're just not a purist in that group. That doesn't mean they're neutral.
I see what you're saying. When I hear moderate, what I hear is this. Here's the left, not even just politically, just anywhere. Here's the left, here's the right. A moderate cuts it in half and I'm in the middle because I want to make everybody happy.
Well,
but you're defining moderate as something different.
Yes, but the moderate, and I'm saying this because I consider myself sometimes, depending on the situation, more of a centrist or a moderate person. They are taking good things from both sides and bringing them in the middle because not everything is always going to work. They're pulling a little bit of this from this side and a little bit of that, and they're working down the middle to be able to find whether it's compromise or find the common ground that everyone.
Okay, then I'll concede because
hold on. But that's not what the nine's doing. The nine is not a moderate or a centrist in my understanding or estimation of things. The nine, and this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but the nine struggles to have any type of personal value or oomph. They are really a neutral person. They're not in it. They're not in it.
And even more than that, they resent when other people are in it. It's the person at the dinner party or the picnic who, as soon as somebody mentions anything even a little bit heavy, they're like, don't bring that up. Why are we talking about that?
Right.
Or they'll like just get up and leave, but you can tell that they're like upset about it. Like they're repulsed by anybody who would have conviction on anything. That it makes them deeply uncomfortable because they're afraid it might lead to conflict because their fear is conflict. So the growth path for a type 9 is simply to have your own voice. That doesn't mean you have to have an opinion on everything, but it's okay to locate yourself and your positionality on any given topic and to say it out loud. And even more than that, a 9 needs to understand if people are not okay with that, that is not always your problem to clean up. You don't have to be the peacemaker all the time. If somebody doesn't like where you stand, as long as you communicate it with love, that's okay. Not everybody has to be happy with you all of the time.
I think that's great.
I mean, that is a real light intro. If you're interested in the Enneagram, it can get far more complicated. There are full books written.
Fun.
I have
It's
books
fun.
behind me just on fives and twos because that's what Dillon and I are. I will say that it helps us tremendously in
Yeah.
our family. You can't really do it with kids. You got to give them time, right? Early adults, maybe. You can start. I wouldn't have known that I was a five till I was probably like 28 or 29.
It's great. It is a great way to be able um, to navigate a marriage in particular, or at least a committed relationship. It's a great
Even
way to.
friendships,
What's that?
even friendships. My best
Oh,
friend,
absolutely. And
Erin, is a
friendships.
four.
Yeah.
She has always, my entire life, she will find these obscure bands. And as soon as somebody else knows about them, she gets very upset. And she's like, I knew about them first, though. And it used to bother me. She knows this. It used to bother me. But then once I started learning about the four, I'm like, oh, it's important to her that she is unique, like it is to all of us. We all
Right.
have that now, right? It's just helpful to
And
help you understand where people are coming from.
yeah, that's what I was just going to say. It really, you can really get to see, like, as soon as you want to say, like, oh, why is that person saying that or doing that? The Enneagram allows you to see something that my professors in seminary always would say, see behind the person, behind the text,
Behind the
behind.
behavior.
Yes, behind the behavior. What's going on behind there?
Yeah. And you
Because,
can't go around labeling people as numbers because, again, this isn't about how
oh,
we behave.
sure.
If this was just about how we behave, I would be a three. I am achievement and goal oriented. I want status, all those things, but I am not a three because my motivation is not the three's motivation. I am a
Well,
five to the core. So you can't just be like, oh, that person's this number. You have to really know them. Ideally, they would tell you themselves what their number is, but some people just aren't into that. Like, I know my parents' numbers because I know their childhood stories. I know the families they came from. I know, you know what I mean? So we can start to be like, oh, that's what's going on. Um, so I just want to start there. You can't go around labeling people if you don't know them super well or have them tell you
oh,
what.
actually, that can be harmful. It's
Yeah.
important for you might be able to help guide with certain characteristics of what a type is. You can help guide someone, but the best thing to do is to have that person tell you how they feel. What do they feel? Whether they take the test or they give you the attributes that they feel that they have, or their thoughts, and
Yeah.
then move from there. It's important to let that person come and share that, not an individual saying, oh, well, you have these certain things, so that's what you are. No,
Yeah.
it has to come from the individual.
Because again, it's not about behavior, it's about motivation, and you can't see
Right.
other motivations.
Right.
All right. That was fun. You know, I love the
Very,
Enneagram.
very fun. This was a good one indeed.
So if you know us, go take the Enneagram and tell us next time you see us what your number is because we find it interesting and we can talk
Yeah.
about it. All right.
Wonderful.
Stay curious.
Stay curious.